Welcome to SmithWeekly Discussions, an occasional program for our readers and listeners of SmithWeekly Research. Please note this program is a private discussion and everything contained herein is for entertainment and educational purposes only. With that, we hope you're in a comfortable position, along with your favorite beverage, to enjoy the discussion. We remind our audience to examine our show notes attached to each of our shows to better understand how our program functions. Before we get into our discussion, we want to say thanks for questions coming from our audience at SmithWeekly, including Jared W., Paul M., Jackie A., and Mark G. On the show today, a new guest, Marna Cloete, President and CFO of Ivanhoe Mines, the company that is developing out substantial copper, platinum, palladium, zinc projects in the Democratic Republic of Congo and also in South Africa. Ivanhoe is a cornerstone position here at SmithWeekly Research. Ivanhoe Mines is listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange under the symbol IVN and also on the US OTC markets under the symbol IVPAF. Marna, it's a pleasure to have you on the show and welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Well, Marna, thanks for taking the time. And where are you talking to us from and how are you holding up?
I'm talking to you from Sandton in Johannesburg, South Africa. And I think it's a strange time for all of us being cooped up in our homes. We started going back to the office about 2 weeks ago. Nice to see a few friendly faces out. But it's definitely a new normal. Everybody wearing face masks. You can no longer stroll to the mall just to go and have a cup of coffee with a friend. So I think it's a difficult time for everyone across the globe.
Well, good to have you, and I'm glad everything's going okay there and you're staying healthy and well. For the audience, Marna, tell us about your background, and then also if you can add the story behind what attracted you to Ivanhoe Mines.
I wish I could say it was all predetermined and mapped out as part of my life plan, but sometimes you end where you are as a result of coincidence and blind luck. I joined Ivano initially to assist in listing the company, and I stayed because of so much more. It's a very dynamic company, taking projects through the mining life cycle. 1 year is really the same as the next. And I've been knee-deep in mining right conversions and applications, negotiations with governments, ownership transactions, M&A, JV partnerships across the globe. And this all happened while I was in my 30s. I think if I went to a bigger player when I graduated as a chartered accountant, I would have ended up in a silo and not had the type of exposure that I've had at Ivanhoe Mines. So it's definitely been the best sort of choice of my life joining the group when I did 14 years ago.
Well, let's look at the big picture, Marna, for a moment. In natural resources, Ivanhoe has a suite of metals, very substantial. Your view on the market conditions for things like copper, platinum group metals, and zinc?
I'll start with copper. I personally remain bullish on copper. It's my belief that the copper price will increase over time and it will recover on the back of Chinese demand and the falling inventories. When you look at copper fundamentals on the back of a project like Kamoa-Kakula, even with copper prices at current levels, the project remains highly economical. But due to the resource size and life of the mine, you really need to take a long-term view, and that's what makes us so excited about Kamoa-Kakula. The mine continues to grow at a rapid pace towards its first production, currently scheduled for Q3 of 2021. And we're well positioned to deliver the mine well-timed for unprecedented government stimulus packages aimed at reinvigorating the world economy. So we are very bullish on copper. On PGMs, we've seen significant increases in the price of palladium, rhodium, gold, and nickel over the last 3 years, and that's a trend we hope continues. We're probably hopeful that platinum will follow suit. But our Platreef project is perfectly placed, being near the bottom of the global cash cost curve. So even at currently depressed platinum levels, it's still a game changer. Our platinum palladium levels are 1-to ratios 1-to-1, and we've got very high concentrations of nickel and copper. And it's estimated that the platinum auto demand will only return to pre-Dieselgate levels by 2025, 2026, which fits very well with the timing of our Platreef project entering the market at phase 1 capacity. And we also of the belief that stricter emission rules in China will keep bolstering platinum demand. And then lastly, just touching on zinc. Zinc is mainly linked to steel fabrication, and in the current COVID environment, it has trended down. But zinc is also cited as one of the base metals to benefit from the global transition into clean energy due to its use in galvanized steel. So it's my belief that that trend will continue and the economy will recover over time, and we'll see a gradual, albeit slow, recovery in zinc outlooks.
People they use the term world-class very loosely across different assets throughout the world, but you can say with full confidence that Ivanhoe Mines has world-class assets, real. So,
yes.
Well, let's talk just briefly about the capital structure of Ivanhoe, Marna. Can you tell us about the capital structure and also the major shareholders and the cash debt position at this point?
Sure. So our current market cap sits at approximately $3.4 US. We've got three major investors: CITIC Metal, which owns 26.4%; Zijin Mining owns 13.8% in Ivanhoe Mines; and Robert Friedland owns 13.4% in his personal capacity. And then our other institutional investors include the likes of Fidelity, BlackRock, Invesco, Skagen, Rothschild. So we've got a large number of institutional investors holding our stock. At the end of March, we had a cash balance of 603 million in the kitty, and we've got no significant debt. So that's a very good position to be in the current market.
Marna, sometimes I think, talking to our audience and seeing what our audience has to say and looking at the natural resource sector, I think our audience sometimes doesn't realize the real scale of the Ivanhoe assets. Can you put that into context for us?
Sure. So at Kamoa, our current updated estimate of the project's initial capital cost is approximately 1.3 billion. That was as at the 1st of January 2019. And the capital cost incurred by the Kamoa-Kakula joint venture in 2019 amounted to 309.1 million. And a further capital cost of 80.9 million was incurred in the first quarter of this year, leaving just over $900 million with construction progress on the processing plant and other surface infrastructure on track for initial production in the third quarter of 2021. Ivanhoe will obviously fund its proportionate share of this spend, which is 50%. The Kamoa-Kakula project is owned 50% by Ivano and 50% by Zijin in its holding company. And then within the asset in country, the Congolese government also owns a 20% stake in the mine. Our construction progress on the processing plant and other surface infrastructure remains on track. And we had very limited delays as a result of COVID restrictions that was imposed within the African corridor. So we're quite fortunate that we're still on track. At Platreef, our estimated pre-production capital requirement is approximately 1.5 billion. That was the estimate in 2017 when we completed our bankable feasibility study. We're currently updating our feasibility study to take into account our revised development schedule since 2017, and also to update the cost and refresh the metal prices and foreign exchange assumptions. This update, together with the study on a phased development plan for our Platreef project, is scheduled for completion in the third quarter of this year. And at Kipushi, we still need to spend a further 337 million to build 90 surface infrastructure. And the Kipushi project we can bring into production within an 18-month period from commencement of surface work. So it is large-scale projects with large capital demands to bring them into production.
And Marna, can you just talk a little bit about the resource size of these assets, the production profiles that are anticipated out of the gate? Can you just kind of give the audience a context from how big these deposits are?
Okay, so Kamoa-Kakula is an unrivaled resource base. It's currently the world's highest grade undeveloped copper deposit. And we've got 36.6 million tons of indicated and 5.6 million tons of inferred contained copper. We also have mineral reserves of 6.6 million tons of contained copper at the average grade of 5.48% copper. And it's still open, down dip and along strike, so it's got excellent exploration potential. Platreef, we've got an indicated mineral resource of contained metal of 30.9 million ounces per 3PE and 31 million ounces inferred. So these are large-scale projects.
Just briefly talk to us about the timeframes again for each of the projects. Can you speak to Platreef, where we are as far as initial production ramp up? To speak to those dates for us.
Kamoa, we're currently scheduled to go so into production third quarter next year. That will be for the first time. There's a ramp-up schedule of 3.8 million tons per annum. Schedule currently planned, and we are publishing our in July, so there's some good news coming out soon. Our initial production would occur at a rate of 6 million tons per annum from the Kakula mine. This is based on as soon as we add the second phase, and we will increase it to 12 million tons with more feed from the Kansoko mine. And then there's also a third 6 million ton per annum mine that will be developed from Kakula West. So all in all, it will be a mining complex that will ultimately produce 18 million tons per annum. The timelines will be dependent on scheduling and financing. So we're currently anticipating that we will bring the second phase online sort of 2 years later than the first phase. But we are looking at possibilities to bring those timelines forward at Kamoa-Kakula. At Platreef, we are currently conducting a study to move forward, bringing the mine into production. There, it's really dependent on funding in terms of timing to get the mine online. And we're looking at taking the published feasibility study case and breaking it down into smaller bite sizes and bringing a smaller mine into production, and then basically fund further development from the smaller mine and raising the necessary funding to bring the 4 million ton per annum mine into production. That will then subsequently be expanded to 8 million tons per annum and then to 12 million tons per annum, making it the largest primary PGM mine globally. Kipushi is a smaller case, and there, as I said, it would take about 18 months to bring Kipushi into production once we start with the surface infrastructure.
Talk to us just a little bit about the further need for finance, whether it be debt finance, equity finance, or offtake. Can you just speak to what you guys see as your needs going forward into this initial production phase? And then going forward, will the production cash flows really take care of the expansion? How do you see that?
Yes, so Kamoa-Kakula is probably the easier one. It's fully funded for phase one. So we have no further funding needs to get phase one into production. And then one could take the view that you could get phase one into production and use the cash flows from the initial phase to fund the subsequent phases. And that's one school of thought. The other possibilities that we are currently exploring is to look at ways to finance pulling forward phase two and ultimately commence with phase two development immediately after bringing phase one online. And that could take a number of there's a number of financing initiatives that one could tap. You could look at offtake financing. We could look at shareholder support from different shareholders, or dip into the equity markets at an Ivanhoe Mines level. And but I think the landscape for Ivanhoe as a company will definitely change next year once we are a producing company and we start generating revenue. It's always a difficult conversation to have with financial institutions if you do not have revenues flowing. At Platreef, we've done a lot of work on looking at finance packages. We've announced a couple of years back that we've put together a initial mandate lead arranger banking group consisting of export credit agencies, some of the major international financial institutions, some South African banks. They can definitely fund a large portion of the 4 million ton per annum mine, but there's always been this funding gap between the equity that we've contributed with our partners at Itochu and tapping into a full project financing facility. And in that regard, we are looking at structured financing possibilities, off-take possibilities. So those are all initiatives that we are currently exploring.
And I think it'd just be important to point out to the audience that Ivanhoe Mines has very, very deep backing. And so my suspicion is that financing one way or the other will not be a problem and will also be on fantastic terms. Well, Marna, let's change gears. Let's move over to the recently released sustainability report. Can you give us an overview on this? And then what items really stood out to you with key importance?
Okay, so this is the third year in which we publish our annual sustainability report. I would say we regard sustainability as a core function of our business, and we have embarked on a journey of the progressive integration of sustainability across all our projects. Approach to sustainability is underpinned by the 6 capitals models of sustainable development, and this year we incorporated the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals into our reporting. And our report highlights how we plan to embed this in our strategy going forward. We have also aligned our environmental reporting with the Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosures framework, and we have conducted climate change risk assessments in this regard. Our 2019 report proudly showcases our diverse workforce, as well as the sustainability efforts undertaken at our key projects. In 2019, we've spent close to 20 million on socioeconomic development projects, and our local procurement spend in Africa totaled in excess of $300 million. Our workforce increased by 64%, with an average of 81% local employment. We trained over 2,000 people in adult education and portable skills. And at Kamoa, through our enterprise development initiatives, local community farmers earned close to $350,000 in revenue for the year. We also recognize access to water as a basic human right, and our community development strategy prioritized the provision of access to water at Kipushi, where we supplied over 2,000 megaliters of potable water to the town of Kipushi. In terms of infrastructure in our host countries, we have partnered with local power utility in the DRC, SNEL, to assist with the refurbishment of hydropower stations for renewable power supply to the Kamoa project. And we have also developed a new road linking the airport in Kolwezi to our Kamoa project. So we are very active across the different pillars of sustainability. And it's part of the DNA of our business. We don't really view it as a standalone add-on to how we approach things. We feel it's an ingrained part of what we do.
Yes, and I would just add that in the natural resource sector, that this is a model for other companies, a scalable model for other companies that are also in the development stages. And whatever stage it may be, exploration, development, production, I think that what you guys are putting together here really serves as a scalable model that other companies should be looking at. And we need these types of things in this business. And you've been in this business a long time. You know, terminology like corporate social responsibility, CSR, the new buzz term, environmental social governance, or ESG. You know, it seems like these terms change like the wind, and they're maybe the flavor of the day. But hasn't good management teams like Ivanhoe, like yourself, going back for decades, always practiced and realized that these matters were always important when developing projects?
Oh, well, they all basically boil down to the doing things right the first time. You cannot build a mine in someone's backyard and not expect them to have a say and certain expectations and minimum requirements. Your social license to operate will determine your ease of doing business. And if you partner with your host communities and you do what is right in terms of contributing to your host nation by way of taxes and other benefits, then a mutually beneficial relationship is established. And this relationship is like a marriage. You need to keep working at it. And if that's the way you perceive this and not just as another compliance aspect to the business, then you will be successful in how you approach your project.
Very well said. And I want to move on here with something similar, just maybe you can talk about it because it is related. South Africa and the Democratic Republic of Congo, Talk about how the management team has been able to consistently obtain a very productive relationship with host governments in jurisdictions that other people looking from the outside are perceived as difficult to operate in. How has Ivanhoe been able to just defy the odds and do a fantastic job with government and social relations?
Well, I would say it's about building up a local presence with key local management that adheres to the highest standards of corporate governance, but also understands the cultural sensitivities and history. You need to foster key relationships, and you need to illustrate good corporate citizenship. And that assists with building trust and finding common ground with dealing with opposing views on some issues. And then, of course, you need patience. And you need to have cognizance of challenges that these governments face today, as well as legacy and historical injustices, which may drive their development imperatives. And once you can put yourself in their shoes, it becomes easier to negate some of these issues that you face when you do have differences with your host nations.
Very well. Marna, with your time working with Robert and other key people at Ivanhoe, what keys would you point out regarding the successes, the difficulties, and having a team that gets along with each other? What items would you point out for folks who are interested in seeing, how you guys are able to make this work?
Well, working for a visionary such as Robert requires one to be adaptable, and you need to be open-minded. It's a highly rewarding environment, but you are challenged to think outside of the box and to present alternative ideas on an ongoing basis. It's important to stay grounded and to focus on basic principles when approaching difficult tasks or to come up with new ideas. We have a very flat structure in our organization, and I firmly believe in an open door policy where you greet each other by name and you know people. We spend the majority of our day at work, and we truly believe it's important that you like the person you sit next to. If you compare your work life to your home life, you're building a legacy for your family at work, and you don't want to take your work to home. So you want to have an environment where you can freely share ideas and where you can leave work at work and leave home at home. And that's why we try and create a family culture within our business. And I would say that's probably what's kept most people staying with the company. We've had very few people leaving the company over the past couple of years. Once you join Ivano, you never look back.
Well, I appreciate the insights. And are there any, just kind of going on with what we just kind of mentioned here, are there any industry people that you would like to mention, perhaps that you found instrumental in your own experience and your own success that the audience really should pay attention to?
Well, I would say my mentor was probably Lars-Erik Johansson, our previous president and CEO. He's taught me most tricks of the trade. He's now retired, but currently in our environment, I would say Robert for his intellect and vision. He thinks big, and when you think big, you achieve great things. We have a great team coming down the pipeline and many Africans that will write their name on the global mining stage. Our Executive Vice President Sustainability, Dr. Patricia Makesha, ticks that box. She's one phenomenal African woman, and she just oozes Madiba magic. So I think there are different people, different aspects of the business that sort of inspires one. One person would make you aspire to change lives. And when we mine, you should mine responsibly. And it's about providing a legacy for communities. And when you work with somebody like Robert, again, you're just in awe at the way his brain works and how we can come up with new ideas or think about structuring things differently that nobody else thought about. So I would probably highlight those two.
Exit strategy for Ivanhoe, buyout or a long-term producer?
It's a good question. I would like to believe that this is our legacy and that we will build these projects in Africa and become a large, culturally diversified mining powerhouse, representing Canada, Africa, China, and Japan. But then again, anything's for sale at the right price.
Appreciate your response there, and I think folks would be very happy either way at this point, and it's just really getting underway. So it'll be interesting to see how that story plays out and how that develops. And Marna, any plans to have Ivanhoe listed on the Amex New York Stock Exchange?
Not at present, but I would never say never.
And for potential investors who are on the sidelines listening, Marna, what would you say to them at this stage and at current price levels? Why should they consider Ivanhoe Mines now?
Well, I think we've got 3 disruptive world-class projects in our respective commodities, coppers, PGMs, and zinc. If you look at the resource size of particularly Kamoa-Kakula and Platreef, it's not a short-term investment. These are large ore bodies that's going to be around for hundreds of years. And it's about taking a long-term view. You cannot argue against our unrivaled resource bases. We're in the bottom quartile of the cash cost curves at both Kamoa-Kakula and Platreef. And therefore, in my mind, it's a definite buy stock.
Excellent. And the best way for investors to reach out to you and to the company?
Is mailing Bill Treneman or Matt Keevil, our investor relations team in Vancouver, and you can get their contact details at www.ivanhoemines.com.
Well, Marna, it's been a fantastic time to chat with you. Good to hear from you. And again, thanks for coming on our show.
Very nice meeting you as well. Thank you.
Stay well and take care.